Hi, it's Duratner Hassan, and we're back at the Modern Parenthood podcast. And I'm delighted to have today Sarah Peacock with us. June is Pride Month, and she is going to share her story of fertility and her journeys to have her two babies. So, Sarah, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
This podcast is meant to provide information on reproductive health. It does not establish a physician-patient relationship, and we would urge you to contact your treating provider regarding your care.
It is such a delight to have you here. You have such an amazing story, and I would love for you to share your story with our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm excited.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I am living in Nashville, Tennessee. I've been in the music business for about 23 years, give or take some change. And I have two beautiful daughters, thanks to you. And life is awesome. I'm taking some turns, but we're pivoting and we're rolling with it. And honestly, yeah, I'm from Georgia originally, so but yeah, that's the elevator pitch to a little bit about me.
Well, wonderful. Tell us what led you to your journey to have your first child.
Yeah, so I think in order for me to really before we dive into the fertility stuff and to wanting to be a parent, I think like some context would be important, especially for my story since I'm part of the LGBTQ community. So I'll back up just a little bit and kind of like we're going to zoom into like my childhood and sort of some of the messaging and narratives around that. And I grew up in the South, so super conservative Southern Baptist, family. And so a lot of the messaging and narratives, like within that culture and that time and space, especially like in the early 90s, it's a lot of like, the tapes that play in my head are just that, queer people don't deserve to have families. Gay adoption was starting to become like a topic of conversation in the religious community. And just I remember hearing that and not really knowing at the time. I knew I was different, but I just like the messaging for me just didn't feel inclusive. It felt very alienating. And so as I'm kind of taking in a lot of this as a young kid growing up in the South, and hearing that, I think as I became an adult and learned how to kind of reconcile my faith and my identity, and kind of coming full circle now, they call it like deconstruction or whatever. And like, I think just that messaging in general, like it was all the more like important. And like, there's just sort of this deep, longing, for equality, in my spirit, and feeling this just the deep desire to just be able to become a parent and to become a mother and to have children, as an LGBTQ person, having overcome what some of that messaging did to me as a young preteen and young adult. It was just all that more meaningful and important for me to just to choose that path, and to become a parent. So.
Yeah, love is love, and parenthood should be a possibility for everyone. So, how did you get started on that first journey?
Yeah, so I was married at the time, and we were starting to talk about wanting to have a family. I was about 36, I think. 36 maybe. Yeah, about 36. And we tried many different ways, all the different ways that you could possibly try to conceive. We tried at home. We also went to see several doctors here in Nashville, did about 3 rounds of IUI, and nothing was working. And I sort of, the last failed pregnancy test with the IUI, the doctor said, if you're going to have success, you're probably going to want to try IVF. You're going to need to, pull out the big guns and just go IVF all the way. And so it was at the time the pandemic, and most of us musicians were not working. And so I had found myself with a lot of time on my hands and decided that I would look into companies that provided IVF insurance. So I went to work at Starbucks for a couple of months, got the insurance through there, and we were able to do several rounds of IVF with you, Dr. Norhassen, and we did the reciprocal cycle IVF, and several failed transfers, but eventually got my daughter Willow.
For our listeners out there, I want to tell you about reciprocal IVF. So reciprocal IVF is when one partner undergoes the IVF process, so the injections where we retrieve that person's eggs, and then the other partner, we transfer the embryo to that person's uterus. And you have Willow now, which is amazing.
Yeah, she's amazing. I'm just, when the moment that I held her for the first time, it felt like all of those deep longings, those questions that, because there was such a struggle, it was nearly 5 years of struggling with infertility to have her. From the time we started trying when I was 36, nearly 36, to the time that I was 40 when I gave birth to her, it just felt like this just explosive amount of love and gratitude. And it was overwhelming to finally be able to say that, like, I was a mom and, like, hold my baby, and all of the pain and the heartache that we went through in that journey. And even just, like, I remember just living in Tennessee and going back and forth to Texas, like, so much to see you, and the flights, the drives, the tests, the outside monitoring. I remember, like, you called in a lab for me when I was in New Mexico one time on the road touring, and it was just like, it was so much effort and so much work. And then in that split moment, it just was like, overflowing with just gratitude and love, and just so ecstatic to finally meet this little being that I wanted so desperately. And it's just, thank you. So yeah, you're the one that helped us do it.
Well, wonderful. I mean, you went through so much coming from a different state and traveling, and when you're on tour and doing all the blood work and trying to find places to do ultrasound. The amount of dedication that it took to get to having your first child, it says a lot about you and a lot about of our listeners who want to have children. They're going through a lot financially, finding a right job, finding insurance coverage, figuring out how they're going to pay, if they're going to pay out of pocket, and then time to do all the testing, time to do the sonograms, the blood work, the multiple phone calls, the consults. It's like you're living a second job at that point with trying to keep up with your fertility treatments. And I applaud you for doing all of it. And that's why Willow is here.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And not to mention everything you just said, I'll echo that. But also when you hit roadblocks along the way that you weren't expecting, it can be so disappointing. And I just remember failing those 2 transfers and thinking, oh my gosh, is this ever going to happen for me? I was so devastated and so, I was sad. I was super sad. And I just remember you saying, don't give up. It's going to happen. And, you were like, we'll figure this out. And we did. And that's what made, holding Willow for the first time just that much more meaningful and special. It was just that cumulative, the cumulative efforts over the years, and finally having the end result in my arms, like, even describe it. And then with Luna, so I have a new, well, she's not technically a newborn anymore. She's 2.5 months. I have a 2.5-month-old also. So thank you for Luna.
Yes. So this leads us right into the next question, because tell us about how you decided to go about having that second child. I will tell you, for me, it took me 5 egg retrievals and surrogacy to have my only child. And for years, my son bugged me for a sibling, and we ran out of eggs and sperm. I mean, we literally probably used our last egg and sperm, or last good one at least, to have him. And so tell us about your decision to give Willow a sibling.
I always knew that I wanted to have more than one, and I wanted to have them all. I think we ended up with, when I was married at the time, I think we had a total of 4 euploid female embryos. And I would just imagine every day I would bring Willow home from the hospital. I was just like, oh my gosh, how soon can we have another one? And she was the perfect baby, and she slept through the night from the time she was about 6 weeks old. Great eater, just chill, super, super great baby. And then I found myself shortly after Willow was born, kind of unexpectedly going through a divorce. So I kind of like took the time I needed to sort of process that and figure out what was next. But yeah, I knew there would be another one. I just didn't know how, and I didn't know when, and I didn't know how long the legal process was going to take for things to finally be over on that end, so that we could begin the next part of the journey. And yeah, I remember just having a regroup with you, and we were talking about it, and we had one embryo left that was mine, and we were going to kind of roll the dice with that. And I remember you saying, if this is it for you, why don't, maybe you should consider getting an egg donor. I was like, oh my gosh, like here we go again, right? Because I didn't have the insurance anymore, and I was like looking up what it would be to find an egg donor. And at the time, life was just chaotic. Finances were chaotic. It was all over the place. And so there I went again, looking up like jobs that offered that kind of insurance. So I went, and this was 2 summers ago. I went and I got a job at Amazon for a little bit, a very, very, very little bit, and got their insurance, and their insurance covered my egg donor cohort purchase. And when we were ready, when the divorce was final, I think I called you that day. And I said, hey, guess what? It's final. It's go time. Let's do this. And I had my egg donor. I had my embryo, the one from, several years ago that was mine, still frozen. And then the new frozen embryos, we had 2. And, so yeah, we set the cycle up in, I think it was April of 2025, and transfer was June 12th, I believe, of 2025, and it happened immediately. So yeah, that's how Luna got here.
That's such a fantastic story.
Single mom by choice with Luna. So and I am so grateful that I did it. I'm so glad I did it. Not a single ounce of regret at all being, a single mom by choice. It's by far the best thing that I've ever done. So yeah, she's amazing. She's a great baby too. I was kind of nervous. I was like, oh, Willow is such a good baby. She was, sleeping through the night and everything, and never had any issues with her. I was like, oh, I can't even imagine. Like, I'm probably not going to get that lucky twice. And sure enough, it was just like the universe going, I'm gonna give you a golden kiss, you little single mom, and bless you with another baby who sleeps through the night and eats well and is super chill and super sweet. So I got so lucky with Luna, even a second time around. So don't tell that to too many people.
Well, all of
There's
our
a lot
listeners
of,
are going to hear pretty soon that you got lucky twice. And, many of my patients, y'all go through so much just to have children. And I think what I hear from my patients is that the babies are so amazing. They're so perfect because you don't think about the sleepless nights. You're excited to be exhausted because you finally have a child that you can hold, and that's so amazing.
yeah. Sometimes both things can be true at once, right? You can be just, oh my gosh. And also, this is what I wanted. And I wouldn't trade this chaos for anything. And I feel that very often as Willow is a toddler now. She is 3 and change. And, some days she just gets me, she just every time Luna needs something and I'm feeding her, or she's, Luna is she needs a diaper change, or I'm busy with her, or I'm nap trapped or something, it's like immediately Willow goes, Mommy, I need you to feed me this peanut butter and jelly sandwich that I'm perfectly capable of feeding myself, or Mommy, please go pick up that toy over there on the floor that I am perfectly able to do on my own. And I'm just thinking, but also at the same time, because it's exactly what I wanted and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Yes,
So,
you're happy to have the chaos. I totally
yeah.
understand.
Yeah. Did your son ever just like totally grate your nerves where you're in that moment where you're like, God, but then also like, I get to be frustrated right now because I work so hard for this. Like, it's kind of a both and, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. It's what I
Yeah.
call long days, but short years. I mean, the time
Oh,
goes by
yeah.
so quickly.
It
But
really
I'm so,
does.
you feel like you're exhausted all the time, but you're happy because you're
Yeah.
exhausted all the time
Yeah.
because this is what you
Yeah.
wanted.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Tell us about what it's like being a working mother and having 2 young ones.
Oof. Being a working mom and having 2 young kids. It's unique, that's for sure. I'm an entrepreneur, and I don't report to an office. I have to be accountable and be a self-starter and report to myself every day. And ultimately, I'm the only one responsible in my household for making sure everyone gets taken care of. There's food on the table, the bills are paid, and it's definitely a challenge. Right now, I am taking full advantage of the fact that Luna, my youngest, who's just 10 weeks, is sleepy all the time, and I can keep her in my office and I can hold her and I can, type away on my laptop, and she just needs milk, she needs diaper changes, she needs love, and she needs those are the main 3 things that she needs. And I have a good situation with childcare for my daughter Willow. But it's a lot, I mean, I put Willow to bed, and even oftentimes in the evening, Luna and I come back into the office, and we, I'm working, until sometimes 10, 11 o'clock at night, and then Luna and I go to bed, and fortunately she sleeps through the night for the most part now, and I get decent sleep, but it is hard, it's challenging, and Willow's already struggling a little bit with some of that attention going to someone else, and now my attention is with Luna and work. So it's sometimes with work, it's like Mommy's on a phone call, or shh, mommy has to take a call, and that can be challenging, but it's awesome. It's all just kind of part of that beautiful chaos that we were talking about.
Yeah, and you sharing your story today is part of the advocacy in letting others know there are people out there that are struggling to have a child or have children, and there are options available for everyone. So, what else are you doing in terms of advocacy for others to help them grow their families?
I think a lot of my friends are are starting to think about starting families. You know, a lot of us kind of came up in the music industry together. And so a lot of my female friends, they are either not married and want kids, or they got a later start, kind of like me. And so really just in my community, I try to be really vocal with my friends and with, you know, people that I come across who are, you know, where the topic kind of comes up. And so, you know, a lot of people sort of feel held back by finances, which is completely understandable. And also just, you know, the idea of being a single mom by choice feels overwhelming for a lot of people. So I try to just, honestly, I think like, I'm not afraid to talk about my story, right? I talk to my friends, plenty of couch conversations about what it was like. And I remember I was at a little Easter party a couple of weeks ago, and the conversation came up. So like, how are you doing this, Sarah? Like, what in the world are you doing, and how are you making this work? And like, how did you even have 2 kids? Like, what did you even do to go through that? I'm like, oh my gosh, what a loaded question, you know? And so here I am, like, everyone's looking at me, and I'm in a room full of like, you know, 38 plus other female friends of mine. And I think they're all just kind of like on the edge of their seat, like kind of wanting to hear like how it all happened and stuff, and how I made it work financially too, because it's hard. But there are so many ways to make it work, you know, and it was not easy for me to put on the green apron at Starbucks, to go and day in and day out and take orders and make coffee. And, you know, it was like 45 minutes to an hour commute, like for me to do that. Because at the time I lived way up in the boonies in a log cabin on 2 acres, and coming into town every day for that, it was hard work. And, but I knew what I wanted, and I was not afraid to go out and get it. And the same thing with Luna, you know, with the insurance, with the job with Amazon, you know, I knew that I couldn't make it work financially on my own for where I was at the time. And so I did what I had to do to make it happen. And I think, you know, a lot of people see the mountain ahead of them, right? And they're not really sure how to start climbing. And so I try to talk about that with my friends and with people that, you know, this comes up with in conversation, and just letting people know that like there's hope. And even my friends that are struggling, who are married, that have been trying to have, you know, and nothing's working, and trying to conceive, you know, they're frustrated, they're devastated every month getting that negative pregnancy test. And it's just like, you know, I know that there are so many paths to parenthood. And I think when I was sort of at the end of my journey, after 2 failed embryo transfers, like with you, and I was just, you know, kind of facing the reciprocal cycle thing and figuring out where we were going to go. It's just like, I kind of came to terms with like, you know what, there's so many paths to parenthood, and there's not a wrong path. There's not a path that makes you less of a mom or less of a dad. You know, having an egg donor, for example, like I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about that, but like, I mean, we put in 2 embryos, and I don't know, like if Luna is mine or if she is the egg donors, but it doesn't matter. Like there's so many paths to getting that end result, and the end result really is just a matter of the heart. It's like holding that, you know, all the science aside, right? All the labs and the tests and everything like that, like the hurdles you have to go through to get to the other side. The end result, like, is how it makes you feel, right? And that whatever sort of like DNA chain in there, like if, you know, if, for example, like if Luna is, you know, not my genetic child, like it doesn't matter. Like my heart loves her the same. And I think like coming to like a close on this whole thing, because I feel like I'm just sort of rambling, but yeah, like just accepting like the many paths of parenthood, and just like encouraging like my friends and stuff who are struggling, considering the process, like, you know, if you really want it, it's possible, and it takes a lot of hard work, a lot of dedication, and it might not be, something that happens that quick. And so get ready. But the end result, I mean, like I couldn't be happier. Like it's just amazing to be a mom. It's the best thing I've ever done with my body, with my life, and I could not be more grateful.
And you're absolutely right. Parenthood is the love that you give to a child. It doesn't matter if it was a biological child, donor egg, donor sperm, surrogacy, adoption. Parenthood is really defined as how you raise that child and the love that you give to that child. So I absolutely applaud you for that. And you're so right. You're so brave, and your story is incredibly inspirational. And that's one of the reasons I wanted you to share your story. And one thing you just said to me really resonated is the fertility journey. It seems like this giant mountain, and you don't even know where to start, which path to take. Is there a longer or shorter path? And then sometimes up that mountain, you have to stop and take breaks because you're exhausted, you're tired, and you don't know if you will ever make it to the top of that mountain. But when you hold that child, when that child's finally born and you're at the top of the mountain, it's amazing. And I'm so grateful for you for sharing your story. And if there's anything you would like to leave our listeners with, a last word of advice, any tips for our listeners out there, we would love to hear your advice.
I think sometimes when I look back on my journey of IVF, and the fertility journey, or the infertility journey, as an LGBTQ person, I think I just sort of like assumed, right, that the only reason I would need fertility treatments was because there was a lack of sperm, and that was the only component that I needed, that was missing for me to become a mother. And then getting into it and realizing that there were some other things, just kind of like exacerbated the emotional roller coaster, right? And I sometimes look back on it and I go, man, I wish like I hadn't wasted so much time and money on trying all these different things. Like I think 36 at the time. I was like, sometimes I wonder if we had just gone to IVF right away, if I would have, that biological component, or this or that, or I wonder if I hadn't done, this or that in my past, like would I have had better egg quality, or did I do something that, that maybe messed with my fertility? Like, is it my fault or whatever? And I think about all the variables, right? But then I think like, if I had a different outcome, I wouldn't have like the Willow that I have, right? I wouldn't have the Luna that I have. And I just think like, it's perfect, just the way it is. Even though the journey was what it was, and it was longer than I wanted or expected it to be, I have the two most beautiful, perfect children that I was meant to have. And I think if I were to leave your listeners with something, it would just be to remember that. If you are stuck in the middle of grief and lab work, it's not a fun place to be. It's very difficult, but just try to remember that, and I know it sounds trite, but it is true, that whatever child you are meant to have, whatever baby you are meant to hold or to carry, is the one that you're meant to carry. And so it all kind of boils down to, trusting the process. And it's a very hard thing to do. But I've got my Willow and I've got my Luna, and I'm so glad that I trusted the process. And I trusted you, Dr. Noor Hassan. It was not easy to trust you, despite how a wonderfully amazing you are, coming from several other experiences here in Tennessee, where I was working with doctors. I was like, oh, but I trust you with my life. You figured it out. You did it, and thank you. And so, yeah, keep the faith, people. And go see Dr. Norhausen for all your fertility treatments, because she's not only making miracle babies, she's a miracle worker. So thank you.
Oh, Sarah, you're absolutely welcome. But thank you so much for being on the show and for sharing your experience with our listeners.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Sarah, for sharing your story. And it's so important that other members of the LGBTQIA plus population hear your story, because your story is so inspirational. And I want everyone out there to know that parenthood is a real possibility and love is love. And so I'm so grateful for you for sharing your story today as part of Pride Month. If you like stories like this and you want to learn all things fertility, please like, follow, and subscribe Modern Parenthood Podcast.
Pioneer.